Hi, I am the Warhead Chicken, and this is my review of Inglourious Basterds. Of all the films coming out in 2009, it's safe to say that I was most excited, but also most apprehensive about Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Basterds. I've tended to be a pretty big fan of Tarantino's movies, but his last film was Death Proof, and quite frankly that was one of the worst films I've ever seen in my life, and I've seen Highlander 5, The Source. Pity me. Inglourious Basterds had all the potential to be an instant classic, but also all the potential to be a complete train wreck. So it gives me no lack of pleasure to announce that this is not only his best film since Pulp Fiction, but also one of the best American World War II films in decades. It's also one of the most misadvertised films of all time, though. Not that the advertising didn't make you want to go and see the movie, it just lied about what was in the movie. In fact, the film isn't really about the Inglourious Basterds, a group of American soldiers dropped into Nazi-occupied France in order to wage an Apache-styled guerrilla campaign against the Germans. The film has a central focus, and that's pretty doubtful from its fractal narrative. The focus is on Hans Landa, played by Christoph Waltz, and not the Bastards. Waltz described Landa as the role of the century, and though it's a little early to claim that, he's in with a good shot at role of the decade, definitely. Landa is a Nazi officer who's clearly very intelligent and doesn't fall into any of those standard Nazi archetypes that movies have developed since the war. He's got very ambiguous feelings and motivations, and you're never really sure where he's coming from, and it really keeps you guessing throughout the whole film exactly what he's up to and how much he really knows. The Waltz portrays such a complex character so well is impressive in and of itself. That he does so in a total of 4 languages is frankly amazing, and that's another area where the trailers lied to you. This film isn't in English. I guess that the principal language of the film is actually French. There's also a hefty amount of German in there and a small amount of Italian, as well as some English, which probably serves as the film's second language after French. If you've got a problem with subtitles for whatever reason, then be aware Inglourious Basterds may not be for you. Another area to be cautious about is its violence, though there is actually a very small amount of violence in the film. We never see the Bastards ambush a single Nazi patrol. We only see them deal with the prisoners afterwards, and we only see that happen once. In fact, with the exception of 2 very notable explosions of violence late on in the film, the latter of which makes the Dirty Dozen look like amateurs, the entire thing's fairly reserved for Tarantino. The focus of the film's action being on incredibly tense dialogue rather than violence. The violence serves more as an undercurrent to the dialogue, lending it the tension. And this is all a good thing, since dialogue is where Tarantino's real skill lies. What violence is there, though, is very effective, and it's more reminiscent of Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs than the overblown, unrealistic styles of Kill Bill or Death Proof. So though it's far from a gore fest, it can be pretty unpleasant at times. As well as Waltz, the performer who really deserves praise is Melanie Laurent as Shoshana, a Jewish girl who escapes the murder of her family by Landa's troops and is then by random chance given an opportunity for revenge. In many ways, Shoshana could be seen as a retread of the bride from Kill Bill, but she's a much more interesting and vulnerable character. She hasn't got any elite training or specialist skills, but she does possess an intelligence and a drive for revenge, which makes her a very compelling protagonist. Shoshana comes off as the most easily relatable character in the film, because she has an emotional vulnerability to her that sets her apart from the rest of the cast. She hasn't been hardened by any special training, she isn't a soldier or a spy, and it's all the more enjoyable watching someone like that fighting back against Nazi oppression than watching someone like the Bastards do it. The Bastards themselves, by and large, come across as, well, bastards. They beat Nazis to death, they scalp the dead, and what few survivors they leave behind have swastikas carved into their foreheads while they're still conscious by Brad Pitt's incomprehensibly accented Aldo Raine. But for all their hideous actions, you're still on side with the Bastards, and that's for 2 reasons. Firstly, they're doing it to Nazis, and Nazis are the best villains in cinema because you can do anything you like to them and you can make them as evil as you like and it still works. See the Indiana Jones trilogy for further reference on that point. And the second reason you're on side with the Bastards is because, with one exception, they're all Jewish. The Jewishness of the Bastards as opposed to their Americanness, and for that matter the Jewishness of Shoshana, is repeatedly emphasized throughout the film. In fact, the whole film basically boils down to a revenge fantasy in which Jews are given the opportunity to get their own back on the Nazis, and well, with that kind of motivation it's a bit hard to go too far. Some critics have complained that the major rewrites the history which the film conducts, but they're completely missing the point of the movie. For a starter, Hollywood has been rewriting history for decades. At least Tarantino does it honestly. At no point does Inglourious Basterds even attempt to have you believe that this is a true depiction of history. And that's because it's not actually set in a historical war. It's set in a cinematic alternative of that war. Let me see if I can clarify what I mean there. There have been so many Second World War films at this point, it's created almost an alternative version of World War II. For instance, when you think of the D-Day landings, do you think of black and white news footage, or do you think of the opening of Saving Private Ryan? It's in this alternative movie world version of World War II, if you will, that Inglourious Basterds takes place. It's not a film about war. This is Tarantino. It's a film about war movies. And in that context, the ending makes perfect sense. I won't spoil exactly what the ending is, only to say that it lends an entirely new meaning to the word overkill. So to wrap up, tense, remarkably funny, and endlessly entertaining, Inglourious Basterds manages to redeem an increasingly stale subgenre, as well as redeeming the career of one of Hollywood's most likable directors in one fell, bloody swoop, and I cannot recommend it highly enough to you, even if, like me, you were put off by the train wreck that was Death Proof.
Been putting out fire with gasoline.